Okay. Good morning. Is this slide visible and am I audible? Anybody else can respond, please?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Yes.
Visible.
Okay. So now let's proceed where we have left in the last class. Okay. So continuing project scheduling. Last class I have discussed about the fundamentals of project scheduling and activity planning. So now let's go into deeper. Actually, what do you mean by activity? How to represent the activity? Those things today we'll discuss. Let us first discuss what do you mean by a project and its activities. Then we'll also discuss some assumptions that may be relevant when we want to start to produce an activity plan. So let's first define activity. Let us first define a project and in terms of activity, then we can see how activities can be represented. A project is composed of a number of interrelated activities, isn't it? Any project you take, it is normally consisted of a number of interrelated activities. You take, for example, an MIS project. Normally, it consisted of the activities such as first you have to do feasibility study, then requirement analysis, then design, then coding, then testing, then maintenance, etc. Again, if you subdivide, the design is divided into many types like procedure oriented design, activity oriented design, or you can say another category might be database design, GUI design, code design. Similarly, testing, when you will go different interrelated testing activities, sub activities, you can say like your unit testing, integration testing, system testing, regression testing, and so on. So in this, a project is composed of a number of interrelated activities. Now, a project may start when at least one of its activities is ready to start. Please, when we say that a project is going to start, a project may start when at least one of its activities is ready to start. There may be 10 activities, but out of those 10 activities, if at least one of its activities is ready to start, then we can say that yes, the project may start now. But this is not true for the completion. When you say project is completed, a project will be completed when all of the activities it encompasses have been completed. When all the involved activities, when all the participating activities, they are completed, then we can say that a project is going to be completed. Now, an activity must have a clearly defined start and a clearly defined end point. Any activity you take, it must have a starting point as well as an ending point. Every activity must have a starting date and must have an ending date. So these start points and end points normally they are marked by the production of a tangible deliverable. When we say that activity start is going to start or end, we can mark it by the production of a tangible deliverable. Suppose when you say that this requirement analysis phase is over, when the SRS document is produced. When you say that the design state is going to be start, that means when the SRS document is produced, then only the design can start. And what is the point that the design is over? That means when all the data flow diagrams or UML diagrams or data dictionary, they are produced, then we say that yes, design is completed, like that. So when coding is completed, when you take when the program you have completely written, then you say that yes, the coding activity is completed. So in this way, any activity, it can be defined by a start point and end point, and normally those start points and end points are represented by the production of a tangible deliverable. If an activity requires a resource, then what will happen? Then that resource requirement must be forecastable. If any activity requiring a resource such as manpower or computer or printer or scanner or whatever that may be, if an activity requires a resource, then that resource requirement, it must be forecastable in advance. It can be forecastable by you, and it is assumed to be required at a constant level throughout the duration of the activity. Please try to understand. Suppose coding is an activity. You require resources here, the manpower, 10 coders. It is assumed that this requirement of 10 number of coders is constant throughout the duration of activity. It's not that first you take only 2 coders, then 5 coders, then 10 coders, then 10 coders, and towards the end again you send 5 coders back, only you will manage with 5 coders. No, nothing like that. If you are taking some resources for a particular activity, then the level should be maintained constant, then that level should be constant throughout the duration of that activity. It should not vary. Similarly, the duration of activity must be forecastable. Here what I have told you, that the resource requirement must be forecastable. Similarly, what time will be taken by an activity, that means the duration of an activity must be forecastable. You must able to predict, you must be able to forecast the duration for an activity, assuming normal circumstances and the reasonable availability of resources. We will assume that as if everything is going fine, the circumstances are normal, and the resources required by the activity, they are reasonable, they are available also. This is the normal case we are assuming, and with this assumption, we will be able to forecast or predict what time, what duration will be taken by an activity. You know that some activities might require that others are completed before they can begin. Yesterday I was saying about precedence relationship. If it is required that B can be started, or activity B can be started only after A is completed. That means what? B is, or activity B is dependent on activity A. That means there is a precedence relationship between B and A. There is a precedence requirement between B and A. B requires that, activity B requires that. A must be finished first, then only B can be started, because B will use the output produced by activity A. That's why B is dependent on A. So these types of requirements are known as precedence requirements, or these types of relationships are known as precedence relationships. Now let's say I have already told you projects are consisted of some interrelated activities. Then how to identify the activities? Essentially, we'll see there are 3 kinds of approaches to identify the activities or the tasks. Those are making up a project. These approaches are: first one, the activity-based approach, next one, the product-based approach, and then we can see a hybrid approach, maybe consisting of both taking the features of activity-based approach and product-based approach. We'll first take up the activity approach. So this approach consists of creating a list of all the activities that the project is thought to involve. Okay. So as its name suggests, activity-based approach. This approach consisted of what? By creating a list of all the activities by using which the project can be evolved. So this might require a brainstorming session. So identifying the activities using this approach requires a brainstorming session involving the whole project team. Here the whole project team will be involved, or it might stem from an analysis of similar past projects. If it is a new one, the whole project team may be involved to identify the activities, or if it is a similar type of project, you have already done similar types of projects in past, then this approach might stem from might originate from an analysis of the similar types of past projects. When listing the activities, particularly for a large project, it might be helpful to subdivide the project into the main life cycle stages and consider each of these separately. This is a hint that is given to you. When listing the activities, maybe particularly for a very large project, then what you can take the help, it might be very helpful to subdivide the project into the main life cycle stages. You can decompose the project, you can subdivide the project into the main life cycle stages, and then consider each of these separately. Then you go on dividing each activity separately. So as I have already told you, you can take up like the major main life cycle stages might be requirement analysis, then design, then coding, then testing, etc. Then each one you can divide, like design can be database design, UI design, code design, testing can be integration testing, system testing, and what regression testing, and so on. Rather than doing this, that means rather than what subdividing this project in an ad hoc manner, what you can do with the obvious risks of omitting or double counting the tasks, a much favored way of generating a task list is to create a work breakdown structure. So if you will subdivide the project into the main lifecycle approaches or the stages, and if you are doing it in an ad hoc manner, just in a haphazard manner, then what problem you will get? You might omit some of the activities unknowingly, or some of the activities you may write twice. Some of the activities may write twice. That means double counting of the tasks. This might happen if you will subdivide the project into different activities and activities into sub-activities in an ad hoc manner, in a haphazard manner. Then these problems will occur. Two major problems. You might omit some activities which is really required, or you might duplicate it. You might double count some tasks. So in order to avoid these problems, what you can do, you can create first a work breakdown structure, which you have discussed in the last class. You can create a work breakdown structure, and from the work breakdown structure, you can identify easily the activities. That will be that will be more correct to identify the activities. Then we will go to the next approach, that is the product-based approach. It's just similar to WBS. It consists of producing a structure called as PBS, or product breakdown structure, and a diagram called as product flow diagram. Okay, this method consists of two important items. One is the PBS, or product breakdown structure, and another is the product flow diagram, or PFD. What this PFD indicates? The product flow diagram indicates for each project products are required as inputs. Okay, for each product, what other products are needed to proceed further, which will be taken as inputs. PFD indicates that. PFD can be easily transformed into an ordered list of activities by identifying the transformations that turn some products into others. Okay, this product flow diagram, it can be easily transferred into an ordered list of what activity. What is our objective? The final output desired is what? A list of activities. In the previous approach, we have used an activity-based approach. Here we are using a product-based approach. So here the PFD can be easily transferred into a set of activities. How? By identifying the transformations that turn some products into others. So what are the transformations? If you can identify, and these transformations which turn some products into others, from this you can easily identify the list of activities. So proponents of this product-based approach, they say that it is less likely that a product will be left out of a PBS than that an activity might be omitted from an unstructured activity list. I have already told in the last approach that if you will or in the activity-based approach, if you are subdividing the project in an ad hoc manner or in a haphazard manner, there might be possible you might omit some of the tasks, or you may count some of the tasks double. But this problem will not come in the product-based approach. That's what the proponents of this approach they say. They say that it is very unlikely that some of the tasks will be omitted from an unstructured activity from a PBS. This is very much suitable when you are using methodologies such as SSADM. SSADM, it stands for Structured Systems Analysis Design Methodology. Okay. So that while you have studied this data flow diagrams, there you might have seen there are two important approaches: structured analysis and structured design. This is a combined method. SSADM stands for Structured Systems Analysis and Design Methodology. Okay. USDP stands for Unified Software Development Process. Okay. USDP is also you can say that Agile methodology, USDP. Unified Software Development, USDP, Unified Software Development Process. So So this product-based approach, it is very much suitable when you are using methodologies such as SSDM or USDP for developing your project, which clearly specify for each step or task, each of the products required and the activities required to produce it. Okay, so here this approach is suitable when you are using methodologies such as SSDM or USDP, and this clearly specifies that for each step or task, each of the products required and the activity required to produce it. So here also, as I have already told you, product-based approach is normally very much suitable when you are using SSADM or USDP methodology, which clearly specify for each step or task, each of the products required, what products will be required and what activities will be required to produce that product. For example, if you are using SSADM manual, it's PBS already inbuilt. So, for example, the SSADM reference manual provides what? A set of generic product breakdown structures for each stage in the SSADM, which can be used as a basis for generating a project-specific PBS. Then you can easily identify the activities. So, this is something called the PBS, product breakdown structure. So, we have previously seen WBS, work breakdown structure. Now we have discussed a little bit about PBS, product breakdown structure. Similarly, another structure is known as resource breakdown structure. Which activities will take how many resources? Okay. So it will say that which activities will be requiring how many resources, RBS, resource breakdown structure. Which activity will require how many resources? That can be represented as a RBS. So that you can see yourself what is RBS, resource breakdown structure. So this here I have taken an example of SSADM. Similarly, you can take the example of USDP. As I have already told you, USDP stands for Unified Software Development Process, which is an agile methodology. So in the USDP, so products are referred to as artifacts. So in Unified Software Development Process, the products are referred to as artifacts. And the sequence of the activities needed to create them is called a workflow. What sequence of activities are required to create the artifacts? They are known as workflows. This unified software development process, it emphasizes that the processes are iterative in nature. What processes you are following develop a product, the processes are iterative in nature. This means that it may not be possible to map a USDP process directly onto a single activity network. Just okay, so this means that it may not be very much possible to map a unified software development process. Okay, this means that it may not be possible to map a unified software development process directly onto a single activity in a network. You cannot map the USDP process directly onto a single activity in a network. Okay, just 1 minute, please. Hello. Here we have given an example of USDP artifacts. So as I have already told you that the products are referred to as artifacts, and the sequence of activities needed to create them are called workflows. So now let's see what is this artifacts. We'll take an example. So this is a small example of USDP artifacts. Like as I have already told you, in USDP, the products will be referred as artifacts, and the sequence to create them are known as workflow. So these are some of the USDP artifacts, like requirements. Here is an artifact, analysis and artifact. Actually, you can say that this requirements, analysis, design, implementation, test, these are activities, and for each activity, these artifacts are required. Like for requirements, you can use, how can represent the requirements analysis using which UML diagram, use case diagram. And you know, use case diagram consists of mainly actors and use cases. Similarly, requirements can be represented by using architecture description. Also, requirements can be represented by glossary. Requirements can be represented by user interface prototype. So for requirements, these are the use case model, architecture description, glossary, glossary, user interface prototype. These are the artifacts. Similarly, for analysis, what are the artifacts? Analysis model, analysis package, use case realization, analysis class, architecture description, etc. These are the required artifacts. So this is for example, you can read yourself. Then the other thing is what I have told that The products are referred to as artifacts, and the sequence of activities, they are known as workflows. So let's see one workflow. A sample workflow is shown here. A structuring of activities for USDP requirements capture workflow. So another one example of workflow is given. Here you can see that first you have to find out the actors and the use cases. Then you can then you can go for prioritizing the different use, and you can then detail it, detail a use case, and then you can go for developing a prototype user interface for each actor, and finally you can structure the use case model, which will give the output of the use case model on the structure. This is also a simple one. This is a very simple example taken from maybe your unified software development process, how you can develop a use case model. This is the workflow. It is given here. You can read yourself. Now let's we have already seen this activity based approach and this product based approach. Then we can take up this hybrid approach. The WS, which was discussed earlier, it is based entirely on structuring of the activities, isn't it? So I have already told you WS is used in the activity based approach and PBS is used in the product based approach. So the WS discussed earlier is based entirely on a structuring of activities. There is an alternatively, and perhaps more commonly or popularly, a WS may be based upon the project's products, as shown in next figure. So you can see that a WS, it can be based upon the project's products. So normally WS, we have seen earlier, it is based on the structuring of activities, but it is also possible that a WS can be constructed based upon the project's products, which will be shown in the next figure, which in turn based on a simple list of final deliverables and deliverable products. So earlier in activity approach, we have seen that WS normality consisted of by representing structuring the activities, whereas it is also possible that the WS can be based on the project's products, which is in turn based on a simple list of final deliverables. For each deliverable, a set of activities required to produce that product. We have to also see that for each deliverable, what are the sets of activities required to produce that product. So now let's see WBS in terms of products. So this is a project, and you can see that these are the what we can products, installed system, software components, user manuals, training course. These are products. Now what I am doing, I am trying to specify the WBS in terms of products, and which is done based on a simple list of final deliverables. So these are the products now. Installed system for a project, the products are installed system, software components, user manuals, training course. And if I'll go to the particular product installed system, the activities might be analysis, analyze the requirements, outline design, detailed design, integrate the system, test the system, deliver the system, unit testing, etc. So these are the activities for this product. Similarly, for software components, for this product, these activities may be followed like review the requirements, outline the design, detail the design, code the software, and test the software. And similarly, these are these what you can say activities for this product user manuals. These are the activities for the product training course. So in this way, we can represent, we can identify the activities by this hybrid approach. And this hybrid approach consists of by representing the project first in terms of the products, and then you can identify what activities may be carried out to produce this product. That also will be listed. So here this what identifying the activities is a combination of what activity as well as the products. We are using the WBS and the products. Here the identify what are the products of this project, and then we have to identify for each product what activities are required to produce that product. That's why this is the hybrid approach. Okay. So this already I have told you that it is very likely that in a project of any size, it would be very much beneficial to introduce some additional levels, structuring both products and activities, not only the products, but also we are identifying the activities in the next level. The degree to which the structuring is product-based or activity-based might be influenced by the nature of the project and the particular development adopted. Whether you should go for the product-based approach or the activity-based approach, that will be driven by the or that might be influenced by the nature of the project and the particular development method you are using. Like whether you are using a classical waterfall model or a SSDM methodology or a USDB methodology, depending on that, it will be decided the degree to which the structuring is either product based or activity based. So the degree to which the structuring is product based or activity based, it might be influenced by the nature of the project and the particular development method that is being adopted. A purely activity-based work breakdown structure, having identified the activities, we are then left with the task of sequencing them. In a pure activity-based approach, what we are doing? Okay, as with a purely activity-based WBS, having identified the activities, we are then left with the task of sequencing. In this case, first we are identifying the activities, and then we are trying to sequence them. We are trying to order them. Which activity will come first, then which activity will come next, and then which activity will come next. We are finding out a sequence of them. We are trying to order them. Okay, the ordering of these activities are carried out. A framework detecting the number of levels and the nature of each level in the structure may be imposed on a WBS. Okay, so a framework detecting the number of levels and how many levels you will put. See here, like I have put like this. This is the product level. Then some activities are kept. So there are several levels. So how many levels you have to keep? You have to make a framework. A framework detecting the number of levels and the nature of each level in the structure may be imposed on a WBS. For example, IBM recommends that the following 5 levels should be used in WBS. So IBM has prescribed some recommendations. According to that, there will be 5 levels in a WBS. What are the 5 levels? According to IBM, these are the 5 levels. In level 1, you keep the projects. Level 2, you put the deliverables such as software, manuals, and training courses, just like here. Project, then these deliverables. Deliverables such as software, manuals, and training courses. Level 3 can keep different components such as different components which are the key work items which are needed to produce the deliverables, such as the modules and the tests required to produce the system software. Level 4, they have kept the work packages which are the major work items or collections of related tasks required to produce a component. Okay, and at the end level, they keep the tasks. Okay. I have already told you tasks are the jobs which can be completed within 1 week to 1 to 2 weeks. At the bottom level, that means at level 5, they put the tasks which are the tasks that will normally be the responsibility of a single person, which can be completed within 1 week to 2 weeks. Okay, this is the hybrid approach, and according to IBM, these 5 levels can be used in a WBS. Okay. Now we'll go to the second aspect. I have already told you activity planning, but how to represent activity planning? So activity planning has to be represented using a diagram called, as we call them, as activity networks, or we call them as network planning models. So let's quickly look at these network planning models or activity networks. Network planning models or the activity networks. So these project scheduling techniques model, we have already discussed about project scheduling, basic concepts we have discussed. The project scheduling techniques, they model what? They model the project's activities and the relationships as a network. Okay, so the project scheduling techniques, they will represent, they will model the various activities of the project and the relationships among the projects in terms of what? In terms of a diagram or by using a network. In the network, the time flows from left to right. These techniques were originally developed in 1950s. There are 2 most popular project scheduling techniques. One is CPM, which stands for Critical Path Method, and another is PERT, which stands for Project Evaluation Review Technique. Some of the books, they also take P for project, Either in some of the books you will find it is program evaluation review technique. In some of the books you will find project evaluation review technique. Both of these techniques, that means CPM and POT, they used an activity on arrow approach. Okay, they use an approach called as activity on arrow approach to visualize the project as a network, where in this network where the activities are drawn as arrows. Okay, so in that network I will give some example. In the network, basically it will represent the activities and maybe their dependencies, their relationships. Both of these techniques used an activity on arrow approach to visualize the project as a network. Here, that means in this network, the activities are drawn as arrows. So in this activity on arrow-based approach, the activities are drawn as arrows and joining the circles and the circles and nodes, what do they represent? The circles or nodes, they will represent the possible dates or completion dates of an activity or set of activities. So this was used in 1950s, this activity on nodes. More recently, a variation of these techniques has already come. Okay, right now currently a variation of these techniques, that means the variation of these project scheduling techniques has come up. That is called as precedence networks, that has become popular. So we'll discuss about these activity networks or the precedence networks. And say that previously in 1950s people are using activity on arrow approach. Now a variation has called named as precedence networks. So now let's see. We will first see about these precedence networks. This precedence network, this method uses another approach called as activity on node. Please see. Previously, people are using activity on arrow approach, or this arrow also it is also known as activity on edge. Previously, people are using activity on arrow approach or activity on edge approach. Now, this method uses the switch method, this variation method. This I have already told you. Nowadays, people are using a variation technique called as variation of this activity on arrow approach. This is known as precedence networks, which has become already popular. So more recently, variation on these techniques called precedence networks has become popular. This method, that means this precedence network, this method uses a network named as activity on node network. Previously, people are using activity on arrow or activity on edge network, but now this current method uses activity on node networks, where the activities are represented how? Here the activities are represented as nodes. But please see, in the activity on arrow approach, how the activity was represented? Activity was represented by arrows joining the circles. But here in activity on node network, as the name suggests, activity on node. So here the activity are represented as some nodes or circles. And what do the links will represent, or the arrows? The links between the nodes, they represent the precedence or the sequencing requirements. So this latter approach avoids some of the problems inherent in the activity on arrow representation and provides more scope for easily representing certain situations. So this activity on edge network, initially it was developed in 1950s. Some limitations are there, some drawbacks are there. We don't have time to discuss those things. So those drawbacks are overcome in this activity on node network. That's why people nowadays preferring this network activity in the edge activity on what we can say this arrow network. This method is in majority of the computer applications currently available. These methods, that means activity on node methods, are very much similar, and it must be admitted that many people use the same name. So people, they use the same name for the activity on node networks, and normally people use CPM for this activity on node. So while people are using what CPM, they use this activity on node networks instead of using activity on arrow networks. These methods are very similar, and it must be admitted that many people use the same name, particularly critical path method indiscriminately to refer to any or all of the methods. So whatever methods you use, those are based on activity on node networks. So normally people call them as CPM, critical path method, and nowadays people are using popularly this activity on node network in comparison to this activity on arrow network. But I will try to cover at least one example from activity on node network and one example from activity on edge network. So as I have already told you, an activity network, what does it show? It shows the different activities making up a and their interdependencies or relationships. Equivalent dependencies for activity networks, those I have already told you. One is initially people are using activity on edge or activity on edge, people are using activity on node network. So what WBS structure to an activity network? So how to construct an activity network? It is better first. Then that WBS structure is refined into an activity network. In an activity network, how does it activity network? It shows what? It shows what are the different tasks making up a project. It also represents ordering among the tasks. That means which tasks will be started first, then tasks will be started. Realize that developing WBS and activity network requires a thorough understanding of the task. So in order to develop the WBS or the activity, it is required that you should thoroughly understand the tasks which are involved in the project. Then only you can correctly draw the WBS or the. So as I have already told, okay, let's first see there are two what things I told. One is activity on network and activity another is activity on edge network. Let's quickly little bit say about activity on node. I have already told you in activity on node network in this representation, each activity is represented as a rectangular box. Some of the books they use a circle instead of using rectangular box. Both are okay. Each activity is represented by a rectangular box or rectangular node, and the duration of the activity is shown alongside each task in the node. Please, I am repeating again, as its name suggests, activity on node. So the activity is represented by a rectangular node or a circular node, and the duration of the activity is shown alongside each task in the code. Okay. So each activity is represented by a rectangular node or a circular, and the duration of the activity, the activity is shown alongside each task in the node. So inside the node, at the side of the node, you can represent what you can write down how much duration the activity takes. The inter-task dependencies are shown using directional edges. So nodes represent the activity or the tasks. So how the interdependencies will be represented? The inter-task dependencies can be shown using directional edges or arrows from among or between the nodes. In contrast to AON, in AOE or activity on edge, the tasks are associated with the edges. In AON, tasks are represented how? By nodes, either circular or rectangular. But in activity on edge, as its name suggests, the tasks are associated with what? The edges. Tasks are represented as edges. The edges are also annotated with the task duration. In this case, nodes are annotated with the duration, Here the edges are annotated with the task duration. What is the task duration? You write alongside the. What the nodes will represent here? The nodes in this graph will represent project milestones. Okay, the nodes will represent the different project milestones. Okay, the nodes in the graph will represent different project milestones, such as like say requirement analysis is over, or testing is over, or something like that. So the nodes in the graph represent project milestones. We'll take different examples for these two cases. Activity networks are originally represented using activity on edge representation. I have already told you in 1950s when activity networks were developed, people are first using AOE representation to okay, the activity networks are originally represented using this activity on edge representation. However, it has some limitations or drawbacks. Okay. However, later activity on node has become popular since this representation is quite easy. It is easier to understand and revise. There are drawbacks of AOE. It is also a little bit difficult to understand. So AON has become popular because it is easy to understand, and revise also it is easy to draw. So activity on network has become popular after that time. Now the people are using activity on node networks. Small example, I'll try to construct this activity on node network, and then maybe in some later classes we'll come back to activity on edge network. So the last class I have drawn the WBS for you for this MIS development project. I'll take these two examples and construct the activity on node. If you must construct the WBS, and from the WBS you can easily construct the activity network. Today I will discuss about only activity on node network. The example will draw. Let us take the same example we have considered last class, this MIS development project. Now suppose the project manager has determined the durations and dependencies for each task as given in table. Like specification, this task or this activity has task number T1, and suppose it takes duration 15 days. And it is the first task. It doesn't depend on any other task. This is the first task. Okay. T2 is the design database. It takes 45 days, but it depends upon task T1. That means after specification is over, then only design database can be started. Similarly, T3 is design GUI. It takes 30 days. Again, the constraint. GUI design can start. T3 can start only after T1 is finished. That means design GUI can start only after specification is over. So its constraint is, its predecessor is, we can say T1. It predecessor T1. So what does you can see that T2 and T3 these two activities can run only because they have their predecessor T1. Then comes T4. It is coding the code database. It will take 105 days. But the requirement is that T2 it will be started only after T2. Similarly, code GUI part, it is task number T5. It will take 45 days, and it can be started only after T3 is completed. That the design GUI is completed. Of course, you can code only when the design is over. So code database can be started only after design database is over. Code GUI can be started only after design GUI is over. And next comes integration and testing. And we know integration and testing can be done only after coding is over. How many codings are there? Two codings, coding database and coding GUI, T4 and T5. So integration and test can be started only after T4 and T5 are over. That is code database and code GUI parts are over, and it will take 120 days. Write user manual. This is an independent thing. After the specification is over, you can directly write down the user manual. So that's the predecessor T1. You can write down the user manual immediately after specification is over. That means immediately after task T1 is completed, its duration is 60 days. So these are the different tasks are given. The different dependency relationships are given. Which task will depend on what task, that is given. Duration is given. You can easily construct a activity on node network. Let's see how you can draw the activity on node network. You can see from this table which task does not depend on anything else. T1 does not have any dependency. So the starting point must be T1 I have written specific. So I have already told you in activity on node network, the tags will be represented as circular nodes or rectangular nodes. I have taken rectangular nodes. I have also told that within the node, you have to write down the name of the task or activity and the duration. So within this node, I have taken specification, name of the task, and the duration is 15 days. Then you can see that after T1 is over, which activity can start immediately. You see, find out the task for which T1 is the predecessor. T2, T3 and T7, they can be started immediately. T1 is over. So I have drawn like this. T1 is this. So T1, after completion of T1, what things can be started? You can see after T1 is over, we can start T2, T3, T7. What is T2? Design database. What is T3? Design UI. What is T7? Write the user manual. So after specification is over, this T2, T3, T7 can be started. T2 is design database, it will take 45 days. T3 design GUI, it will take 30 days. T7 is write user manual, it will take 60 days. Then what will go after T2, which can be started? See, I have to see T2 is the predecessor for which one? Code database. That means after T2, T4 can be started. Similarly, after T3 is the predecessor of which one? T5. So after T3, T5 can be started. That we have already shown here. And T3 is design GUI, T5 is code GUI. See, after design database, what we can go for? You can see after T3, T5 can be started, and after T2, T4 can be started. T4 is code database and T5 is code GUI. So after design database, code database will start, and after design GUI, code GUI will start. Its duration, code database is 105 days, code GUI is 45 days. Then what will start after T4 and T5? What is the predecessor? T4 and T5. Its successor is which one? T6. So T6 can be started immediately after T4 and T5. They are over. What is T6? Integrator and test. So now you can see integrator and test. This is T6. So T6 can be started only after T2 and T4 are over. And what is remaining? What is remaining? Everything is over. So at the end, we should put one node for finish. So that's why I have put one node for finish. And it does not take any duration to 0. And finish, so all the final arrows should point to the finished node. So from integrator and test, it will come to finish. Write user manual can come to finish. Normally try to put one start node and one finish node. So here start node, the specification node, and this is the finish node. You can traverse actually back. That means in order to find the dependency, you can see that this is the arrowhead towards the integrate. So that this says that integrate and test depends on code database. You have to go backward. Similarly, integrate and test depends on code GUI. Code database depends on design database. Code GUI depends on design GUI. Similarly, write user manual depends on specification. Design GUI depends on specification. Design database what depends on specification. In this way, you can find out the dependency relationship. I have already told you the time will move from left to right in the activity network. In the activity network, time will move from left to right. But in order to find the dependency, you can find from right to left so that you can know which task is dependent on what other tasks. So in this way, activity networks can be represented. This is the activity on node network because the activities of the tasks are dependent as circular nodes or rectangular nodes. Okay, so this is the activity on networks for the MIS problem that we have discussed on the last class. You first see these activities you can easily get from the work breakdown structure. Then you can use you find out the durations, you estimate the durations and the dependencies. Then you can as you have already found out the what tasks from the WS, then you can easily construct the activity on activity on node network for any given application or for any given project. Similarly, another example we have taken in the last class, that is compiler project. So and I have told that these are the tasks of the activities, the requirements, design, And for design, we have to go for code, or after design, we can go for code, the lexical analysis part, code the parser, code the code generator. Then here after all those things are over, then you can test. So now in order to complete it, only have to write down what? The durations. You estimate how much duration will be taken by requirements, how much duration you will give to design, how much duration you will give to writing manual, how much duration you will give to coding, how much duration you give to testing, like that. You identify, write down the durations inside the boxes. That will be the complete activity on node network for the compiler project. Okay. So in this way, why I am saying, because next class we will discuss about the CPM. So the critical path method. In the critical path method, the first step is construct the activity network. So please try to understand very properly, so that you can develop the activity network for a given project. Then you can go to second step, that is this your critical path method. The managers can then now the question is how to get these durations. So it depends upon your what experience. It depends upon how correctly you are estimating. The managers can estimate the time durations for the different tasks in several ways. One of the possibilities is that they can empirically assign durations to different tasks. Okay, they can empirically assign the durations to different tasks. But this may not be a good idea, because the software developers very often they resent such unilateral decisions. There might be biasness, they might wrongly estimate. However, some programmers prefer to estimate the time for various activities themselves. But some managers, they prefer to estimate the time for the various activities by themselves. These managers believe that an aggressive schedule would motivate the developers to do a better and faster job. Okay, the managers, they believe that an aggressive schedule would motivate the developers to do a better and faster job. They think if you will put a very tight schedule, very aggressive schedule, that will motivate the developers to do a better and faster job. But it may be reversed. On the other hand, careful experiments have shown that unrealistically aggressive schedules, they not only cause the developers to compromise on tangible quality aspects, but also cause greater schedule delays compared to other approaches. So if you will put a very aggressive schedule, very tight schedule, you will put on pressure on the employees, then it will definitely, they will try to compromise on the intangible quality aspects. Not only that, but also it will cause greater schedule delays compared to the other approaches. You might have tried that I will finish it this 3 months job within 2 minutes, 2 months, according to you have prepared the schedule, but actually when you will do, it may take 4 months, because you are trying to put the pressure, and there will be several mistakes the employees do, and by the time of correction it will exceed the 3 months and it may take 4 months. So don't try to put aggressive schedule, don't pressurize your employees to follow a very aggressive schedule or tight schedule. Okay, this is regarding this activity network. We have taken an example of activity on network, and this activity on edge networks may be seen later on. A possible alternative is to left. So instead of putting this aggressive schedule, instead of pressurizing the employees to follow an aggressive schedule, you should try for some other alternatives. Let's see one of the other alternative method here. A possible alternative is a possible alternative is to let each developer himself estimate the time for an activity he would be assigned to. So you leave it to the developer. He can himself estimate the time for that activity that for which he has been assigned to, or he has been assigned to it. He can himself estimate the time that will be required to code a module or so. This approach can help to accurately estimate the task durations without creating undue schedule pressure. So if you will follow this approach, then this will help to accurately estimate. It will help to prepare a better estimate. It will help to accurately estimate the task durations without creating any undue schedule pressure on the employees. Okay, so this is about this activity networks, how we have represented. We have given you some examples. Now we'll go to another third aspects. Under 5 minutes you will take. Very important for your project point of view. Very important for your industry point of view. we'll see something known as Gantt charts. This chart is named after its developer Henry Gantt. This Gantt chart is not a completely innovative idea. It is a form of the bar charts what you have already used in your matriculation career or graduation career. In a bar chart or in a, as I have already told you, in this Gantt chart, or the Gantt chart is a form of bar chart. Here in this Gantt chart or bar chart, each bar represents an activity. Okay, so since it is a bar chart, it is a kind of bar chart. Here each bar represents an activity. Bars are drawn against a timeline. The bars, they have to be drawn against a timeline. The length of each bar is proportional to the length of time planned for the activity. So they must be proportional. You are drawing a bar, its length must be proportional to the length of the time planned for that activity. The vertical axis lists all the tasks to be performed. Okay, in the bar graph or bar chart, the vertical axis, it will list all the tasks they have to be performed. The bars are drawn along the y-axis, one for each task. So where the bars will be drawn, the bars will be drawn along the y-axis, and for each task there will be a bar. Okay. These Gantt charts are not only specific to the software engineering projects, they are also used in software project management. Okay, Gantt charts used in software project management is a version of the standard Gantt charts. People are using this Gantt chart much before, not only for software projects. You can say that the Gantt charts used in software engineering or software project management, these are the enhanced versions of the standard Gantt charts which are already used earlier. There are two parts normally in a Gantt charts. The bars, they are divided into normally two parts: the colored part or the shaded part, and the white part or the unshaded part. The colored part of a bar, it shows the length of a time tag. Okay, the colored part or the shaded part of the bar, it shows the length of time a task is estimated to take. How much time a task is estimated to take, you can make it the bar. That much portion you can make as color or set. The white portion or the white part or the unshaded part, it shows the slack time or lax time. What is the slack time? What is the free time? That can be represented as the white part or the unshaded part. So slack time means it is the latest time by which a task must be finished. That means how much time you can get free. Normally slack time means the very rough meaning of slack time is the free time. I will show with an example. So I have shown a simple example here for our MIS problem. So specification takes how many days? You can see in our problem, specification should take how many days? Specification is, hold on, wait. Okay, so just please let me know, am I audible and the slide is visible? Please respond, anyone. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now I am going to that example. You can see that specification takes how many days? 15 days. So while I will draw this thing, this the Gantt chart, I have like this. Specification, I have to show the time. It has, suppose it has started on January 15. How many days it will take? January 1st to January 15th. So the box will come up to January 15th. Then after specification, what can be started? Two things. One is design part, another one is design database, another is design GUI. So this will take how much? Database part will take. See, database will take 45 days and GUI will take 30 days. So 35. This duty. Database will take January 15 to how much? March 15. Again, just see, it takes January, I think a little bit mistake. It takes 45 and 30. So 45 and 30. We have to start from January 15 and it will take 45 days. That means January 15 to February, end of February or so. So there's a mismatch here. So this date, please correct. It should be some of the 45 days from January 15. So 15 days from January and 28 days from February. Then might be this should be March 1. I'm sorry, I think this will be a mistake. This should be March 1. And then what? 30 days for this. So 30 days means this will be February 15. Please correct it. This March 15 should be February 15 and April 1 will be March 1. So this will be design GUI will take up to this February 15, 30 days. But see, what is the problem? What is the constraint? You can see that the constraint is that the other thing. So after design, you can start coding database. Similarly, after the design GUI, you can start code GUI. Code database will take 105 days. Code GUI will take how many days? 45 days. Now let's see. So what we can see, code database, it will take how much days? 150 days. From where? From this is March 1 to 105 days. Similarly, design GUI, it can be started from this February 15 and how many days? How many days code GUI will take? You can see code GUI will take code GUI 45 days. Accordingly, you count the 45 days and write down the, it will be finished. It will start from February 15 and it will take 45 days, finish somewhere else. Now the other part is important. What is the other part? Other part says that this integration and testing can be started only after coding and coding database and coding GUI are over. Coding database takes only 100. It takes 105 days, but code GUI takes 45 days only. So coding GUI will be finished early. See, coding GUI will be finished early, but code database will take a longer time. But integration and test cannot start until both of them are over. So that's why what I have done here, code database part will take 105 days. Code GUI takes only 45 days, but it cannot start, integrate and test cannot start until both the coding activities are over. So even if code GUI part is finished early, it is to wait. That's why this is the white part or the unshaded part. This is known as the free part or can slack time, because this much time is idle. This who is doing the coding also, now he has to sit idle. So only when both the things are over, then maybe from January 5, this integration and testing can be taken. It may be 60 days or so, then it can be taken. And similarly, you see, when the project will be finished. So you can see two here final activities are there, integration and testing and writing manual, user manual. Write user manual take only few days, but it has to wait. So I can declare that the project is over only when the integration and testing is over. So this white part is what? It is the slack time or the free time. So that means wherever you require, suppose, why I am showing this slack time? Because when you don't have sufficient employees, then what you can do? Those things can be little bit delayed. So this code GUI, instead of starting from February 15, it can be deferred by these days. But anyway, this time is now free here. Integration can be started only after the coding database part is over. That means this code GUI part, there is a possibility we can delay it without making delay the completion of the whole project. Similarly, write user manual, see, so many days are left. We are not so hurried that immediately we should write down this write user manual. It can also be further delayed so that this total completion time will not be affected. Okay, in this way you can easily draw the Gantt chart, very easy. Look at your activity diagram. Okay, look at your activity network. Identify the tasks or the the activities. Mark the dates in this y-axis. Then you can draw the boxes, and because you know the start date and the end date, you can easily draw the boxes. Very easy to understand. You please draw yourself. This is the Gantt chart for the compiler project, assuming that some days for some assuming some nominal duration for these different activities. So these shaded parts requires the estimated time that will be taken by these different activities. White parts say that these are the slack times. Okay. You can also prepare the Gantt chart for the compiler project like this. So in this way, we can draw the Gantt charts for any project. This will definitely give you an idea about the schedule or the duration of the project and which project can be delayed by how many days. Those things you can estimate. Okay, we'll see a little bit more. Gantt charts are very much useful for resource planning. So the application of Gantt chart is what? Gantt charts are very much useful for resource planning. That means how to allocate the resources to the different activities. For that, Gantt charts are the different types of resources. So now what could be the possible types of resources? The different types of resources that need to be allocated to activities. They may be your staffs, hardware, software. These are the different types of resources that need to be allocated to the different activities. This can be represented using Gantt chart. Or Gantt charts are useful for resource planning or for allocating the resources to the different activities. So now I have already told previously two things regarding scheduling. One is CPM and POT, where CPM stands for critical path method, whereas your POT stands for project evaluation and review technique. Gantt chart representation of a project. Gantt chart representation of a project schedule. It is helpful in planning the utilization of the resources. Okay, so this Gantt chart is much useful in planning the utilization of the resources, how the resources can be utilized, how the resources can be allocated to the different activities, whereas POT chart is very much useful for monitoring the timely progress of activities, whether you are moving in the proper direction or not, whether the progress is satisfactory or not, or whether you are delayed like this. Gantt chart is useful for actual or you can say better planning the utilization of the resources. Gantt chart is useful for better planning of the utilization of the resources, whereas the POT chart is useful for monitoring the timely progress of activities. It is easier to identify parallel activities in a project using POT chart. So if you are drawing the POT chart, you can easily identify the parallel activities that I will show in somewhat in the next class. So the project managers, they need to identify the parallel activities in a project for assignment to different developers. Why it is required to identify the parallel activities? Because you can hire more manpower and you can employ more manpower to complete the parallel activities. That's why it is required to identify the parallel activities. But still some of the activities are sequential. How many manpower you may hire, you cannot finish them because they are sequential in nature. One task can be started only after the other task is over. So that's why wherever parallel activity is there, you should exploit them. You should use more manpower to complete it as quick as possible. There are some available tools are there for drawing these Gantt charts. Don't draw using MS Word. So there are some tools are available. I have listed here two open source tools. One is Gantt chart project, another is Project Libre. So previously, actually, we are explaining in the laboratory class. Now to know laboratory is there. However, I will share this a tutorial I will upload today for Project Libre. Similarly, you can find out this Gantt chart. So both are Gantt chart also. Gantt project can be used to draw the Gantt chart, CPM, POT, activity network, PBS, WS, etc. Similarly, Project Libre can be used almost them. Minor differences are there. It's any one you can use, but it will be better if you can learn more. It will help you for your industrial life. So I will upload this in this Microsoft team, the tutorial for Project Libre. Please download both the softwares and whatever assignment I have shown, this MIS application and this compiler design. Both the projects, please draw them using Project Libre and Gantt project. For the MIS project, I have given the duration. For the this compiler project, you can assume the durations yourself. The diagram already I have shown. But the question is, assignment is draw the MIS and these compiler projects using Gantt project and the Project Libre software. You just download themselves, read the tutorials and draw themselves yourselves. I will help you in putting one the tutorial for Project Libre. Okay. So today we have defined the various activities, how these activities can be represented. We have discussed the approaches to identify the activities or tasks. Three approaches we have seen. First one is activity based. Second, where you are using WBS. Next one is product based, where you are using PBS, and another is the hybrid approach. We have also discussed the types of activity networks. Here we have seen two types of activity networks: activity on edge or arrow networks, then activity on node networks. We have explained the concept of Gantt chart, how you can use. I have also told two special online or open source softwares by using which you can draw the Gantt charts, the activity networks, the WBS, the PBS, the RBS, etc. by using two available online or open source tools. They are Gantt project and Project Libre. Thank you very much. We have taken from the references, the contents have taken from these two books. Thank you very much. Now let's take up any questions, please. Any questions, please? Very, very important Gantt chart. Many examinations it comes, even if may come or may not come the examination, but definitely you will use in your campus, in your industry life, wherever you will join, they will give you the project, draw the Gantt chart. So please practice these, at least these two assignments I have given. Please do it, and maybe tomorrow you can upload that thing. Today I will just upload the Project Libre tutorial with some screenshots. Any doubt, please? If there are no doubts, then I will take up this attendance.
Sir, there is a small clarification required. So for lecture 15, slide number 13. So if it's possible for to open that, it's a one-liner clarification, sir.
Okay. Let me see. Lecture 13 or 15?
No, 15 page, slide number 13.
Okay, come in. Yes, please.
So, sir, this is a function definition. So we're saying that for functional definition, we're not going to include that function name as a parent. So it's clearly you mentioned that. So the doubt here is the return type mentioned integer. So we're not also considering those as operator, and also the comma here. So
yeah, comma we are taking na. Comma is taken. Comma is taken as operator. Yes, the operators are these two brackets, this parenthesis and this comma.
Correct. So then, sir, whatever the data type integer, so we have not considered. So we're not supposed to consider for a operator case.
Okay, let's see the function name in a function definition not counted as operator, of course. So function is not taken. So operators are only these two and this, and we do not consider function A, B, and operands. So BC as we do not consider 1 minute this part of the function definition. So you are talking about the integers, isn't it?
Correct. So I was expecting, because I saw some couple of online.
Yes, what they are saying in the online sources?
They are saying that they've considered this integer also, because we are referring our function name f function that should not be considered, which is correct. But if you look at the operator, it is parenthesis and bracket were considered, comma also included. We have not included integer.
Yes.
That's the only confusion, sir, here.
See, actually, these things are a little bit confusing. This thing also not clearly mentioned this thing in the book. So if you have already seen the what source, internet source, we can go by that.
Because sir, what I'm sorry to ask, because there are a couple of questions where we have solved, because everywhere there is a return time followed by the definition, everything. So whether to include that or not, that's a bit of a confusion. So wanted to discuss that.
Okay. So see, as I have already told you from the beginning, these actually Halstead signs, always there is a confusion with the Halstead signs. Even you give to the same, they will do it differently.
Yeah, even
but
since
since
cases,
no actual guidelines, these are also prescribed guidelines. So
even
since
some
you have
cases,
already found out that yes, please.
In some cases, they have also included that function says operand. So I was referring some internet this thing, but we'll go by
so
with your example.
See, in this case, as you have already told you that in the what internet sources are there, you can take that integer But while you do it according to your own organization, see, every organization also they are having specific guidelines. There you have to stick the guidelines given by your organization. That whether you will take this thing or not, they may not actually completely agree with this what is given in the book or in the internet. They are having their own sets of rules or guidelines. So there you have to do for this point of thing. I think since it is they are already given in some of the take no problem for that. Those who have not taken, see, my objective is to explain you should understand. So while it is taking or not taking, it may depend upon your organizational parameters, what guidelines they are prescribing.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for assignment point of thing, you can write down that this because you have referred already, because the book is remaining silent.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I have seen book is remaining silent. So as an additional resource, since we are finding out the what internet sources, we can take that thing, no problem. But please recall any what estimation we are using, we have to, while you are doing, we have to see whether any organizational guideline is there or not. If it is not there, you cite your reasonings that according to this paper or this book or this internet sources, these are taken accordingly. I am using these as operators or operands. Give sufficient references or sufficient justifications so that your boss will not be confused. That is my advice.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Okay.
sir, about the
Yes.
current class and yesterday's class,
Yes. Yes.
the resource management, resource planning. So sometimes, like suppose we break the work and assign the individual developer or QA,
Yes.
and they will
Yes.
come up with their estimation, and they have to
Yes.
justify why so many days.
Yes. Because see, I have given one slide that if you are a senior manager, don't make it aggressive schedules and pressure your employee to do that. This slide, they may compromise with the quality, or they will do so hurriedly, they will commit so many mistakes, and while they will rectify those mistakes, obviously that will exceed your original time. If it is 3 months time, you are pressurizing them do it 2 months. So by this pressure, and when there is sufficient pressure, you will do mistakes. Just you see Indian batsmen when they are taking the second innings, so they will be under so much pressure. So they do not change about 100 runs. Sometimes you see. So that's why you try to make it make it realistic, or as you are saying, also I have mentioned in my slide, leave it to the developer. Let him estimate so that it will be more flexible and he will try to stick to that estimate. That's what other companies are saying, that I have already put my
Yes, sir.
slide.
So you are correct, sir. So one point I just wanted to highlight, like we have in batsmen, we have 14 or 15 member team, sir,
Yes.
backup kind of stuff. Somebody injured
Yes.
and so similar in the project also.
Yes.
We have seen in practical cases, like suppose we have 15 member team, and
Yes.
we have some shadow resource. Shadow resource means, let's say I'm a project manager, I am billable person, and I am supposed to work 50%, but uh, so I
Yes.
include that person.
Yes. It happens in the normal real life. This is, see, there is a difference little bit the book and this reality that is happening in the industry. So always these backup or shadow persons, they have to be included. Hello.
So my point was, sir, are we going
Yes.
to include this kind of concept in our theoretical cases, like backup resources or shadow resources?
That you
Let's
have to
say,
clearly mention actually. If you are using that one, then what are the durations or figures will come, you have to specifically write. Right now, for understanding point of view, let us now drop that one. But as you get more experienced on how to prepare these Gantt charts or the WBS or this what durations activity networks, right now you first do it without considering these backups or these shadow persons. Then after you get sufficient mature, then gradually you put into that, because this is a very safety critical systems, and I must have to take a backup or this parallel what persons, or even the same job can be done by 2 persons, because we should not entertain any failure. So those things you may consider. It depends upon the nature of the project and the type of the person you are considering, how much busy is, or is a very senior person. Normally senior persons are not involved in this. Every project should have one project manager who is dedicated to that particular project. Simultaneously, he should not give in 3-4 projects. After the completion of this. However, these coders, etc., they are assigned into multiple projects. So they cannot only wait for only one project. Coders, testers, or the designers, they are assigned to multiple projects. But normally, project manager should be assigned for every project after completion they have got. But if he is so much very experienced project manager, it is possible he can be assigned to 2-3 projects, and in that case, you have to consider this backup, shadow, etc. Possible you can include that thing there, but that must be consistent in every activity, every task. You have to rationally consider, isn't it? That you have to do.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Got it. Yeah. Yeah.
So today we have discussed all those things. Please draw this Gantt chart and try to upload this thing in the Microsoft team. Today I will write down this assignment for this. Okay. So any other doubt, or we'll stop? We'll take the attendance. Okay. Any other doubt?